For centuries, the Galactic Empire expanded its reach, conquering world after world with relentless efficiency. Their ships and armies spread like a tidal wave through the cosmos, crushing any who dared resist, while the Empire's rulers sat on their thrones in their gleaming palaces far from the front lines. They looked upon the stars and saw only endless possibilities to expand and control. But there was one world that remained a mystery, one world they had long ignored, a small insignificant planet on the far edge of the galaxy called Earth. Earth had always been viewed as primitive, barely even worth noting in the grand scheme of the Empire's ambitions. It was a world teeming with life, yes, but it was chaotic, fractured, and full of conflict, hardly the kind of place the Empire would consider a worthy target for invasion. And yet Earth's humans had been watching the Empire's expansion closely from the shadows. They had seen the rise and fall of countless alien empires as they fought for dominance across the stars, and in their quiet isolation they had learned much about the powers that governed the universe. They had studied the Empire's technologies, their tactics, and their weaknesses. Humanity had always been resourceful, inventive, able to adapt to whatever environment they were placed in, whether it was in the frozen wilderness or in the bustling chaos of their cities. They found ways to thrive and survive. The Empire's ignorance of Earth was its greatest mistake, for humanity had begun to advance in ways no one could have predicted. While the Empire laughed at Earth's primitive nature, the humans had been quietly building their own power, a power the Empire would soon learn to fear. The Empire's first contact with Earth came, as they had with many other planets. A fleet of scouts arrived in the planet's orbit with the intent to observe, gather data, and report back on its potential value for resource extraction. The scouts observed the planet below in their sleek ships. They saw cities bustling with activity. Humans were everywhere, and yet they seemed so small, so fragile. Compared to the mighty forces of the Empire, they had no idea what they were walking into on Earth. The humans watched the sky as the Empire's ships hovered silently above their cities. Their arrival did not go unnoticed. It was a moment of reckoning. Humanity knew it was only a matter of time before the Empire would come to claim their world. The question was whether they would fight back or submit, and that decision was not one humanity was willing to make lightly. In the quiet corners of Earth's governments, a plan was already being set in motion. It wasn't a plan that could be shared with the public. It wasn't a plan that could be broadcasted to the galaxy, but it was a plan that would make humanity's intentions clear. The Empire had made a grave error in thinking Earth was nothing more than a weak, unimportant planet. They had underestimated the resolve of humanity, and that would be their downfall. The humans were ready to fight back, and they would do so with everything they had, no matter what the Empire threw at them. The Empire's scouts hovered over Earth in their sleek ships, observing the planet below, as if they were witnessing a simple, primitive world with no threat to their vast empire. They were wrong, but they didn't know it yet. Humanity had been preparing for centuries, quietly working in the shadows of their own world. They had studied the galaxy's conquerors and their technologies with an intensity that few could match. They knew the Empire would come eventually, and they would be ready. When the scouts made their initial move, they didn't expect any resistance. They expected the planet to fall easily like the countless others they had claimed across the galaxy. The Empire's ships were far superior in size and strength compared to anything Earth could muster. At least that's what they thought. But humanity had learned the art of survival. By overcoming the impossible, they had learned to fight from within the margins, to turn weakness into strength. And now their time had come on Earth. A quiet signal was sent across the world, a code that only certain governments could understand. It wasn't a call for help, it was a call to arms, a signal that would unite humanity's scattered forces from every corner of the planet. People began to mobilize, scientists, engineers, military strategists, and civilians alike. They gathered in secret bases and hidden bunkers beneath the surface of the Earth, where they had been working on technology that would rival anything the Empire had ever encountered. These were not simple weapons of war. These were things that made the Empire's best weaponry seem like child's toys. Humanity had developed devices that could manipulate energy in ways that seemed impossible, cloaking technology to make entire fleets vanish from sight, weapons that could disable the most advanced starships with a single shot, and systems of communication so advanced they could jam entire fleets before they even made their move. As the Empire's scouts began their descent into Earth's atmosphere, they were met with nothing more than calm skies, and a world that seemed almost too quiet. It was as if the planet was waiting for them to make the first move, and then it happened without warning. Earth's hidden defenses came online in a flash of brilliant light. Massive energy beams shot from the surface of the planet, slamming into the scout ships with devastating force. The Empire's ships were thrown off course, their shields were overwhelmed, and their weapons failed to fire in a single coordinated strike. Humanity had already shown its hand. The scouts tried to retreat, but they were too slow. The humans had anticipated this moment, and their counterattack was swift and merciless. One by one, the Empire's ships were disabled or destroyed as Earth's defenses cut through them with ruthless precision. The scout fleet was in disarray, and all of a sudden the Empire's invincibility seemed far less certain than it had moments before. But the Empire wasn't the only one watching. The galaxy was watching too. As word spread of what had happened on Earth, whispers of the humans' unexpected defense began to circulate through the stars, and the message was clear: humanity was not the weak species the Empire had assumed. They were no longer just an insignificant planet. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the Empire would soon have to face the consequences of underestimating them. As the scout ships limped back into space, trailing debris and smoke, the Empire's high command was forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. Earth was not the easy conquest they had assumed it would be. Their initial assault had failed, and the scale of humanity's defenses was far beyond what they could have predicted at first. They thought it was an isolated incident, a freak occurrence, something that could be chalked up to luck. But as the reports flooded in from their fleet commanders, the Empire's arrogance began to crack. They had sent their best ships to Earth, their most experienced officers, and yet they had been decisively defeated in a matter of hours. Humanity had proven itself capable of a coordinated defense. Unlike anything the Empire had faced in the past, they had underestimated the planet's resolve, and now the Empire was in a precarious position. The humiliation was unbearable. The Empire was built on the idea that no civilization could stand against its might, and yet here they were confronted with a world that refused to bend, a world that fought back with an intensity that caught even the most seasoned generals off guard. Back on Earth, the humans didn't pause to celebrate their victory. They knew this was just the beginning. The Empire would not let such a defeat go unanswered. They had only proven they could defend their homeworld, but what came next would determine the fate of humanity for generations to come. The hidden defenses across the planet had been a warning to the Empire, but the humans knew that they would need more than just defensive tactics to ensure their survival. They had to go on the offensive, and they had to do it quickly. In underground bunkers across the globe, engineers worked tirelessly on humanity's counterattack. Their research had been slow and methodical, but now time was running out. They needed a fleet of ships to challenge the Empire's superiority in space, and they needed weapons that could match or even surpass the technology the Empire had brought to bear. They weren't just building tools of war, they were building a new kind of force, a force that would challenge the galaxy's greatest powers. Earth's leaders knew that they had to act decisively. They couldn't risk waiting for the Empire to regroup and try again. They had seen firsthand what the Empire could do when left unchecked, and they had no intention of allowing that kind of power to take root on their world. The declaration had already been made: humanity was not going to be a target for the Empire, not now, not ever. As the days passed and tensions rose across the globe, humanity prepared itself for what was coming. The first waves of retaliatory strikes from the Empire were already in motion. Massive warships were being dispatched from the capital fleet, ready to take Earth by force. But the humans had already learned something important. In the chaos of the first battle, they had learned how to fight back with the very tools the Empire thought they controlled. It was time for the galaxy to understand that humanity wasn't a fragile species to be crushed underfoot. They were a force of nature that would stand tall against anything that came their way. the Empire would soon learn the true power of Earth, not just in its technology or its defenses, but in the sheer determination of its people. And when the next wave of attacks came, it would not be the Empire who took Earth by surprise. It would be humanity that struck first, and with a force the Empire could never have expected. The Empire's retaliation came swiftly, and with overwhelming force their greatest warships were dispatched to Earth. As a clear message, the First Fleet was led by an admiral whose reputation was built on crushing resistance wherever it appeared, and he was determined to teach humanity the price of defying the Empire. His fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's atmosphere and prepared to strike on Earth. The response was immediate. Humanity's forces had been mobilizing for this moment, and they were ready. They knew the Empire wouldn't take the failure lightly, and so they prepared their next wave of counterattacks. But this time they weren't just defending, they were striking back. Their weapons were not designed simply to stop an invasion, but to dismantle the Empire's power piece by piece. As the Empire's fleet moved and their long-range sensors failed to pick up the first signs of the trap, humanity had said it wasn't just the weapons in orbit that they had to worry about. It was the technology humanity had quietly embedded within their own planet. Deep below the surface, Earth's core had been modified over decades with secret research focused on energy manipulation and gravitational technology. The Empire had no idea that a network of devices had been placed under the ocean and beneath the Earth's crust, capable of manipulating the very environment around them. When the first Empire ship crossed into range, it was met with a surge of energy that nearly knocked out all of its systems. The ship staggered as if it had been hit by a wave of invisible force. Its engines sputtered, and the crew scrambled to regain control. The admiral barked orders to recover and push forward. But then it happened again, and again. Other ships in the fleet began to feel the same effects. Their navigation systems faltered, and their shields failed. With no warning, the Empire's once perfect machines began to falter under an unseen enemy. On the ground in every corner of the planet, humanity watched the unfolding chaos with a mix of anticipation and resolve. They had learned how to use the environment around them as an advantage. The energy surges were no accident. They were a signal. The humans had set the stage for a full-scale counterattack, and the Empire's most powerful warships had walked right into it. Earth's own ships emerged from their hidden positions behind the moon and along the far side of the planet. They were smaller than the Empire's vessels, but they were nimble and equipped with the most advanced weaponry humanity had developed in secret. Their hulls shimmered with cloaking technology that rendered them invisible to the Empire's scanners. They moved like ghosts through the vacuum of space. Their weapons were calibrated to target the Empire's weak points. Their strikes focused on engines and weapon systems designed to disable rather than destroy. The first wave of human ships engaged the Empire's fleet with precision. Their attacks were calculated, each shot landing in a weak spot of an Empire ship's hull, each explosion sending ripples through the enemy's defenses. The Empire had underestimated the humans, but now they were learning the cost of their mistake. The Admiral's flagship was the first to fall. A well-placed shot to its engine core rendered it a hulking mass of debris, floating lifelessly in space. The remaining fleet scrambled to regroup, but it was too late. They had been blindsided. Humanity had struck first, and struck hard, and with each passing moment, the Empire's position grew weaker. Back on Earth, the message was clear. Humanity was no longer a helpless species to be exploited. They were a force in their own right, and the galaxy was about to learn that when humans say no, they mean it in ways the Empire could never have imagined. As the Empire's fleet reeled from the devastating counterattack, they attempted to regroup and launch another wave, but humanity had already anticipated this move. They knew the Empire would not simply accept defeat and retreat. They were too proud, too arrogant to back down, so Earth's defenses shifted into a new phase. The humans had already prepared their most powerful weapons, and now was the time to use them. Deep beneath the surface of the Earth's oceans and deserts, massive hidden facilities hummed with activity. The final phase of humanity's plan was coming into play, and the Empire had no idea what was about to hit them. Massive energy reactors built to manipulate the very fabric of space were activated. They generated powerful shockwaves of gravitational energy that could disrupt entire fleets in an instant. While the Empire focused its attention on Earth's surface, humanity prepared a second assault from the depths. Humanity's counterattack was not just about ships or weapons, it was about disrupting the Empire's very ability to fight back. Without warning, a wave of electromagnetic pulses surged out from the Earth's crust, instantly disabling the Empire's communications and sensor systems across the fleet. Entire divisions of ships were left blind, unable to detect the positions of their enemies or even communicate with each other. The Empire's fleet was scattered and disoriented, and that's when the humans struck again. The first human ship to enter the fray was a massive vessel armed with a powerful energy cannon designed to pierce the toughest of shields. It emerged from behind the moon and fired a single blast at the flagship of the Empire's fleet. The shot hit with such force that the flagship's shields buckled and its hull cracked like an eggshell under a hammer. The ship exploded in a brilliant burst of light as debris scattered across space, and the admiral, watching from his command center on a secondary ship, shouted in disbelief. The Empire's fleet, now in full panic mode, attempted to regroup and counterattack, but the humans had already anticipated their every move. They had learned to fight by studying their enemies' weaknesses, and now they were exploiting them to devastating effect. Each shot from humanity's ships found its target. Their weapons were finely tuned to disable and incapacitate rather than destroy, but each strike sent a message: the humans were no longer fighting to survive. They were fighting to win on the ground. Earth's forces were equally relentless. Humanity's military leaders had already planned for a prolonged battle, and their forces were prepared to fight on multiple fronts. The Empire's invasion forces that had landed in cities around the world found themselves under attack from both the human military and civilian resistance groups working in unison. What had started as a scattered effort had now become a full-blown coordinated resistance. Humanity fought with a unified purpose. They fought not just for survival, but for their very identity as a species. The Empire's invaders were trapped, caught in a war they didn't understand, with an enemy that refused to give up. Humanity had proven it was a force to be reckoned with, and the Empire was beginning to understand just how wrong they had been to underestimate Earth. As the battles raged on across Earth and in space, the message was clear: humanity had declared its independence from the Empire, and it would not be easily swayed. Humanity was no longer a weak species hiding on a backwater planet. They were a rising power with the strength to defend their world and to fight anyone who would dare threaten it. As the Empire's fleet struggled to regain control over the chaos, humanity's forces began to tighten their grip. Every move they made was calculated, every attack a message: they weren't just defending Earth anymore. They were actively dismantling the Empire's ability to maintain power across the galaxy. The tide had shifted, and the Empire's pride was beginning to break on the ground. The Empire's ground troops faced unexpected resistance as humanity's civilian population rose to fight back. It wasn't just soldiers and generals. Now every citizen had a role to play. Engineers, technicians, and even students armed themselves and organized into underground units. The resistance wasn't just confined to military forces. It was a worldwide movement that brought humanity's full might to bear against the invaders. The streets were filled with makeshift barricades, the air thick with the scent of determination and fear, as people fought not only for their survival, but for the future of their world. The Empire's ground forces tried to dig in and hold their positions, but they were fighting an enemy they didn't understand. Humans had learned to fight in ways that defied military doctrine. They used their surroundings to their advantage and coordinated attacks from multiple angles. Even when it seemed like the Empire had the upper hand, the humans turned the tables, using guerrilla tactics to harry and disrupt their enemies. The Empire's soldiers were caught in an endless cycle of attrition. They were never allowed a moment's rest. The fight wasn't just a battle for Earth, it was a battle for the spirit of humanity itself. Meanwhile, in space, The humans' newest weapon was deployed, a massive ship designed not for speed or maneuverability, but for sheer destruction. The ship was built in secret, a weapon of unimaginable power, armed with a series of gravity cannons that could manipulate the fabric of space itself. It was humanity's ultimate answer to the Empire's overwhelming firepower. When the ship was activated and fired for the first time, the results were devastating. A massive pulse of energy ripped through the vacuum of space, sending shockwaves that shook the Empire's remaining ships to their cores. The Empire's command was thrown into disarray. The admiral in charge of the Second Fleet ordered a retreat, but it was too late. Humanity's fleets emerged from the shadows to engage with terrifying precision. The Empire's ships were caught in a vice, their engines crippled, and their weapons useless. The humans were no longer defending their world. They were hunting down the Empire's remaining ships, one by one, forcing the invaders to scatter in retreat. But even as the Empire's forces fled, the humans knew the fight wasn't over yet. They had struck a decisive blow, but they also knew the Empire would not let such a defeat stand. They would regroup and return with greater force. Humanity had already shown its power, but now they needed to make sure the galaxy knew Earth was not to be trifled with, not now and not ever. A broadcast was sent out from the Earth's leadership to every corner of the galaxy. "This is Earth," the message began. "We are not your conquest. We are not your slaves from this day forward. The Galactic Empire is on notice. Earth is off limits to anyone who dares to try." As the message echoed through the stars, the Empire's remaining forces knew one thing for sure: humanity would no longer be a footnote in the galaxy's history. They had earned their place at the table, and no one would forget the price the Empire had paid for underestimating them. The broadcast from Earth reverberated across the galaxy like a thunderclap, shaking the very foundations of the Empire. The message was simple, clear, and defiant. Earth was no longer an unimportant world to be ignored or conquered. It was a force to be reckoned with, and now the Empire would have to contend with the reality of their defeat. Humanity had made its declaration, and the galaxy was listening. For the first time in millennia, the Empire faced a challenge. They could not easily crush. A planet that had been considered insignificant by their most powerful commanders was now at the center of galactic attention, and the consequences of underestimating Earth were beginning to sink in. The Imperial capital leaders scrambled to respond. The damage had already been done: the humiliation of their fleet's retreat, the destruction of their most advanced warships, and the declaration from Earth's leaders were all symbols of their failure. And as word spread through the galaxy, whispers of humanity's triumph began to gain traction. The Empire's response came quickly, but not with the immediate force they had once wielded. Their fleets were disorganized and morale was low. The Emperor, once certain of the Empire's superiority, now faced a new reality. The Empire was no longer invincible. Their dominance had been called into question by a species they had ignored for far too long. There were murmurs of revolt within the Empire's ranks, as some sectors began to question the wisdom of continuing the war against humanity. They had been wrong to dismiss Earth, and now they were paying the price. On Earth, the humans prepared for whatever retaliation the Empire might muster. They knew the declaration they had made had shaken the galaxy, but it was only the first step in a long struggle. The Empire would not back down easily. They would regroup, rearm, and return with greater force. Humanity needed to remain vigilant. Their victory was not a conclusion, but the beginning of a new kind of war, a war for their survival and for their place in the galaxy. In secret, humanity's leaders began planning for the future. They knew they couldn't rely on one victory alone to guarantee their safety. They had to build alliances and expand their influence beyond Earth's atmosphere. The war had opened their eyes to the broader galactic community, and humanity had already begun to reach out to those who might be willing to stand with them against the Empire. But it wasn't just military alliances that humanity sought. They also understood that they needed to advance their technology and strengthen their defenses if they were to survive the next wave of imperial retaliation. Throughout the galaxy, the Empire's rivals watched with keen interest as humanity's actions unfolded. Some were inspired by the audacity of Earth's people. Others saw an opportunity to weaken the Empire's grip on the galaxy and perhaps take their place among the stars. The balance of power had shifted, and the galaxy was now watching to see if humanity could hold its ground or if the Empire would crush them and reassert its dominance. On Earth, the mood was one of cautious optimism. The fight was far from over, but humanity had proven that they could stand up to the Empire, and they had earned the respect of the galaxy in doing so. Now they waited for the Empire's next move, knowing that whatever came next would determine the future of their world and their place in the stars. As the days passed since humanity's bold declaration, the galaxy was holding its breath. The Empire, wounded and humiliated, began to lick its wounds and prepare for a new campaign against Earth. But the once overwhelming confidence of the Imperial forces had been shattered, and now, despite their immense resources, they were uncertain of how to approach this new reality. The loss of their most advanced fleets, their most experienced commanders, and the crushing defeat they had suffered at the hands of the humans had left them in disarray. For the first time in centuries, the Empire was vulnerable, and the galaxy took note. On Earth, humanity didn't wait idly by. They knew the Empire would return, and when they did, they would bring everything they had left to bear. Humanity had tasted victory, but it was a fragile one, built on the foundation of resilience, innovation, and the unity of a planet that refused to be subjugated. They began strengthening their defenses, bolstering their fleet, and accelerating their technological advancements. They weren't just building ships now. They were designing new weapons, new strategies, and new forms of warfare that would outmatch the Empire's greatest attempts to retake their world. Humanity also knew the galaxy was watching, and that they had to be ready not just to defend Earth, but to protect their place among the stars. Alliances began to form, slowly at first, with those who had quietly observed the Empire's cruelty and sought to weaken its power. Alliances forged from shared interests and mutual respect, alliances that would provide humanity with the strength to face the next wave of imperial retaliation. And beyond, messages were sent to various alien civilizations, many of which had suffered under the Empire's yoke for millennia, offering an olive branch for a new kind of coalition, one where the Empire would no longer dictate the fate of the galaxy. The Empire, meanwhile, was forced to confront the idea that their domination of the galaxy was no longer a guarantee. Their once seemingly unstoppable war machine now had a target to focus on, one that was unpredictable and determined to survive. Every report from their generals confirmed what they feared most: humanity had become a force capable of resisting their might, and the galaxy was no longer their playground. Humanity had awakened, and their survival instincts had proven themselves to be more than a match for the Empire's arrogance. The Emperor, realizing the shifting tides of power, called for a meeting of the highest Imperial Council to discuss their next steps. It was clear now that brute force would not be enough to crush Earth, and that something far more strategic would be required. The Empire could no longer afford to underestimate humanity, nor could they afford to appear weak in front of their allies and enemies alike. But no matter what strategies the Empire devised, one thing remained certain: humanity had proven that it was capable of standing toe-to-toe with the galaxy's most formidable power, and that fact could not be ignored. For Earth, the victory was not just in the battles fought and won, it was in the resolve, the spirit, and the unity they had shown to the galaxy. Humanity had declared their independence and had proven they were not just survivors but warriors in their own right. They had awakened a sleeping giant within themselves, and now they stood ready for whatever the future held for them. The Empire would learn that Earth was no longer a planet to be conquered. It was a world that would carve its own path and ensure that its future among the stars would be one of strength, resilience, and freedom.